Hey, you guys, welcome back to another episode of I'm Not Gonna Lie. I'm your girl, Ashley Cupid. And before we get into today's episode, I want us to take a moment to really just arrive here together. It's morning time for me as I'm recording. So I also want to just be present as I'm recording. So wherever you're listening from, whether you're driving, laying down, getting ready, or just sitting in silence, let's take a deep breath with me, okay? So we're gonna breathe in and breathe out. Okay. I feel like honestly, I kind of needed that, And I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't take a moment to just breathe as well. I'm thinking about doing that every episode, just taking a moment to pause and really breathe. I love that this space is created to feel very grounding, where we can slow down and tell the truth. I'm Not Gonna Lie is about growth, healing, lifestyle shifts, spirituality, and the real conversations that happen, when you're becoming someone new. We're not performing, we're not pretending, just honesty. Okay? Okay, so today's episode, as you can tell, is all about who we become when we can't go back. And I want to start by saying this. There comes a point in your life where going back is no longer an option. Not because you don't want to, but because your awareness won't allow it. You've seen too much, you've healed too much. You've learned too much about yourself. And that realization can feel very empowering and also terrifying at the same time. But in today's episode, I just wanted to talk about that moment. The moment when you realize that the old version of you no longer works. The moment you understand that you can't unknow what you know now. The moment you start asking yourself, if I can't go back, then who am I becoming? The moment you realize there's no going back, that realization usually doesn't come loudly. It doesn't always come after a big life event. Sometimes it comes quietly, in the middle of an ordinary day. You notice that the things you used to tolerate feel very heavy now. And, the environments you once felt comfortable and are suddenly feeling draining. And that's a good thing. The conversations you used to entertain and have, it just all feels misaligned. And you realize, I can't really do this anymore. Not in a dramatic way, not in, an angry way. You're just being honest with yourself, like, this isn't for me anymore. And that moment is a turning point because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once your standards rise, once your self awareness deepens, and once your nervous system learns safety, there's no real way to go back to who you were before. There just isn't. And, that's just when the real work begins. It's part of the whole journey. Nobody really talks about the grief that comes with this stage of growth. We're talking about healing like it's just this sort of relief and clarity, but there's also loss. You grieve the version of yourself who didn't know better. It's a person, that did bring you comfort. Our old selves did bring us comfort, which is why a lot of people say their old selves. You're grieving the version of yourself who didn't know better. Oh, I said that. You grieve the ease of ignorance. You grieve the simplicity of being who you were when you didn't question everything. And sometimes you miss her or him. Like I said, not because that was the better way, but because it was more familiar. It was more comfortable to be the old version of ourselves. And a lot of us stay in that skin for a very long time. And so it's just very familiar. And you miss knowing how to exist without thinking so deeply about everything, because that happens. Trust me. You miss not feeling responsible for protecting your peace. You can miss not having to choose yourself so intentionally, kind of be more self aware, I don't know. It's just like you miss not having to, I guess, be the better version of you, and you can grieve that part. That's okay. That grief doesn't mean that you made the wrong choice. It just means that you're simply doing what it is. You're changing, and that is the cost of becoming. That's the cost of being able to not go back to the old you. That is the cost of being a better version of yourself. It just means that you've changed. So, when you can't go back, you're forced to move forward, right? Even if you don't know exactly where you're going yet. And that's where identity kind of starts to shift is like, okay, where am I going though? I know I don't want to do this. Maybe it's I've left this job, I've left this mindset, I've left this friendship or relationship, whatever the case may be. Now, what is it that I want? What's my new identity? And as you're on this journey of just being a better version of yourself, you do become more intentional. You are more selective. You're more honest. You stop forcing yourself into spaces that don't fit. We talked about that last week. You stop explaining those boundaries that you have. You also stop betraying yourself to keep the peace. All of that you do over time. You realize, like, okay, I can't even believe I was putting up with half of this shit for so long. And honestly, that's okay. It's something you can laugh about later. It's sad, but you can laugh about it later. And there's also moments of just feeling like lonely because a lot of people aren't doing this work. A lot of people are afraid to do the self-healing, the self-development, and everyone does it differently. It can feel lonely sometimes. Like you're the only one really doing it this way, or like no one really understands you, and that's okay, because as you go on your journey, and you ask for people, you can ask, for me, I ask the universe to send me like-minded people. We're on the same page when it comes to just how we think, growth and mindset and spirituality, so that I do feel aligned, and I don't have to be so selective, and it's just something that like falls into place. So yeah, but anyway, you can feel lonely. Um, and that's just because not everyone grows with you, and not everyone recognizes you anymore. And not everyone understands why you can't just be like who you used to be. I don't know if you guys ever heard that, like, but you'd be surprised. People are like, why can't you just be who you were? I'm sorry, sips my hot water. Hold on. You never want to be in a situation or have people around you and your energy that want you to be who you used to be if you're currently trying to be a better version of yourself. Remember that. Because the truth is, you're not becoming difficult. You're not better than anybody. It's nothing like that. It's just you're becoming more aligned, and that can scare the shit out of people because you're doing the work that they are too afraid to do. And that's their story. But don't feel bad for who you are becoming. The in between season, when you realize you can't go back before the new version of you feels fully embodied, there's a middle space, a liminal space, a season where you are no longer who you were, but not yet fully comfortable with who you are becoming. Um, this season can feel confusing and quiet and a little unsteady. There may be times where you feel unmotivated, disconnected, less social, more introspective. And it's easy to think that something is wrong, but nothing is wrong. This is integration. Your nervous system is catching up to your growth. Your spirit is recollaborating, and your identity is reorganizing. I call that the in between season. This season isn't where you get stuck, it's just where you get rooted. Okay, and that's okay. It's a time for reflection is what I say. When I'm in the in between season, it's a time to reflect. It's a time to be in solitude. There's nothing wrong with that. Just stay grounded and rooted. and continuing seeing your process, continue seeing the end goal, the clarity that you want, the clarity that you have. When this season feels uncomfortable, the temptation is to go back. Go back to those old habits, old relationships, old environments, not because they're aligned and they're great for you, but like we said, just because they're familiar. And, being familiar can feel like a safety net, even when it's not. Every time you choose being comfortable over, alignment, you do abandon the person that you are becoming. And eventually, your body won't let you do that again. So, as you're on this journey of becoming someone, a better version of yourself, you do have to realize there's going to be those temptations of just going back to your old ways for whatever reason. It could be for the reasons of, what we said, just feeling lonely, people always having something to say. But you have to be able to push through those. You have to be able to see the bigger outputs, the goal. You want to be able to see the growth of yourself. It's all part of that journey. And that's kind of like when you understand that growth and healing, it's not about comfort. It's so uncomfortable. But that's like the best part. We never want to be comfortable. We never want to be too comfortable in a mindset that isn't the best one for us. To me, spiritually speaking, I believe that this stage is very sacred, okay? I feel like God doesn't remove old versions of you to punish you. He removes them to really protect you. The old version of you did what it needed to do to survive. Survival is not the same as alignment. So when you can't go back, it's because, you're being invited forward, forward into truth, forward into discernment, forward into peace. And you have to trust that. You have to trust that who you are becoming is is a purpose thing, okay? And if you're struggling to trust this version of yourself, just start small. You're even starting by listening to this podcast. Pay attention to what brings you calm. Notice what drains you. Let your body guide you. Listen to your inner self. Listen to your mind and your body. Build routines that support a safety instead of some type of just stimulation. You don't need to know exactly who you are becoming yet. You just need to stop doubting and betraying yourself while doing it. Don't overthink about, oh my God, this isn't right for me. I can't do this. I don't have what it takes. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And guess what? Clarity comes after consistency. So if you're consistent on showing up for yourself, if you're consistent on being a better version of yourself, if you are consistent on being grounded and rooted and wanting to move forward in truth and wanting to move forward in peace, your clarity is going to come. Write that down. Clarity comes after consistency. Okay, before we close, I want to guide us through a short reflection. I'm trying to see if I want to add these different reflections, on the episodes. If it's something that you guys like, definitely let me know in the comments. I believe you can write comments down if you're listening on Spotify. But if you can't, if you're listening on Apple, then just send me a DM and say, hey, I really like the guided reflection. I'm just trying something. But yeah, so let's take a slow breath in and a slow breath out. Beautiful. Ask yourself quietly. You hear the birds chirping, you guys? They sound so sweet. Okay, but ask yourself quietly, who was I before I knew what I know now? What can I no longer return to? Who am I becoming because of that? So you don't need answers, but just ask yourself that. Get the mind going and thinking, and just notice what comes up while you're thinking about it. All right, you guys, if you are in a season where you can't go back, I want you to know this. This doesn't mean you're lost. It just means you're being shaped, okay? So just be patient with who you are becoming. Be honest with where you are and trust that the version of you on the other side of this is worth all the discomfort, all the overthinking, all the doubts, all the, those loose ends that you're tying up and cleaning up. It's all going to be worth it. Trust that version. Okay. Thank you for listening with me today. I know this is a smaller episode, but sometimes you don't need a 30-minute episode to say what you need to say. Thank you for choosing growth, even when it costs you comfortability. I'm Ashley Cupid, and this is I'm Not Gonna Lie, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.